Hello, my name is Arnika and I'm the Associate Curator of the Museum of Art and Photography in Bangalore. As part of MAP's ongoing theme, Art is Life, this talk is presented in collaboration with the Bangalore International Center. We are very honored to be speaking with two wonderful artists today, Atul Dodiya and Asim Waqif. Although their practice is vastly different, we thought it would be interesting to explore the differences and contrasts instead of merely looking for commonalities in their process of making art, their influences, and their artworks. We are also grateful to our Indian Sign Language interpreter for today, Neha Vishwaroop, for her time. Now, let me introduce our speakers. Delhi-based Asim Waqif studied architecture at the School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi. After initially working as an art director for film and television, he later started making independent videos and documentaries before moving into a dedicated art practice. His recent projects have attempted a crossover between architecture, art, and design, with a strong contextual reference to contemporary urban design and the politics of occupying, intervening, and using public spaces. Some of his projects have been developed within abandoned and derelict buildings in the city that act like hidden activity spaces for marginalized people. And secondly, please welcome with me Atul Dodiya. Through his paintings and assemblages, Mumbai-based Atul Dodiya engages with both political and art history in a way that entwines global and public memory and local as well as personal experiences. Dodiya combines images from Bollywood, popular cultural material like calendars and posters, studio photographs, newspapers, and from the works of a range of Indian and international artists. In his past works, he has used images from the works of modernist artists like Tayyab Mehta and even Bhupen Kaka and Sudhir Patwadan as reflections on the art of painting itself, and by doing this, he pays homage to his influences, but also borrows their identities through a kind of painting role play. Occupying becomes a form of channeling or reenactment, weaving the master's identities and ideas to Dodia's own and vice versa. Their longer bios can be found in the chat box. And I would like to invite the audience to use the Q&A function at the bottom of our screens to ask questions to the speakers at any point during the event. In the later part of this talk, I will direct your questions to the speakers. I would like now to invite Atul to present his work. Atul, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you so much, Arnika, to have me in this program. And I think my work will be shown a diverse works which I have kind of, from 1989 onwards, selected few works which you will be seeing on the screen. So please start the presentation. Mainly, these are large oil paintings, about 6 feet by 4 feet, and I had a camera which I bought, and I thought that the photography, I would do photography as a photography to begin with, and I realized how difficult to take a good picture, good photograph. So then the pictures which I had taken, they become a kind of a reference to my, they become like a sketch for my painting. And so you see a lot of photographic references or imagery, blur images, the out of focus kind of a thing.
Atul, would you like to share a little more about the images you're showing us?
Well, yeah, actually, because see, you can see that how it's been kind of going, and also subject matter wise, it's how it's kind of changing. There are references to German artist Gerhard Richter, or there is a reference to Bhupen Kakkar, and also you see shutter paintings where uh, there is a specific reason to come to shutters and to um, think about this heavy metal landscape and open it, close it. So I was, and then of course I did something very different from the basic painting medium. It was like a cabinets and showcases with diverse objects and photographs, sculptures, found objects. So that's something which I enjoy. Essentially, I say that I'm essentially a painter. So the shutters or cabinets also I put on the wall, the way we put painting on the wall. So even though assemblage with three-dimensional things in it, it's still kind of mainly a painter's vision which works there. Then, of course, the series of Gandhiji came. Um, when I saw the, after 1992, when the Babri Masjid was demolished, and there was a, huge tension and riots and so much violence, after that between the communities, and I felt going back to Gandhi and talk about it. So there was a series of painting which I did on Mahatma Gandhi, a large scale watercolor, Gandhi in oil with photographs put together, Gandhiji on shutter, and the Gandhi still matters to me, and it's just my big concern in the context of the present time, the bleak time, I would say, not just in India but everywhere, where you see loss of faith. um, People are um, you know really troubled by the way killings had happened, and no compassion for fellow human being. So that's there. But then, of course, there are a lot of playful things in my work. I enjoy humor a lot, and I feel like if I'm not laughing while doing my work, I feel very miserable. So there are paintings which are full of fun and tongue in cheek kind of a thing. The literature which matters to me, which I enjoy reading, particularly poetry, and I actually painted the text not as an abstract form, but actually a readable text. Where if someone can read English, but really, uh, read the poem. So they have a large poem painting, which takes me to my interest in the painting, Indian Mughal and Rajput. So illustrated text probably, and illustration, and or my interest in 7th and 8th century Chinese calligraphy, probably all this thing. And I feel that anything which is visual, particularly in the city of Bombay itself, is a major influence, I would say, to begin with. It allows me, as soon as you come out on the street, you are bombarded with diverse, images, sound, smell, people, and all kind of experiences. So I think that's something which is very much has inspired me to do things in a diverse way. And I never felt like was sticking to one particular uh, method of painting. um, and yeah, I'm all the time influenced, heavily influenced by other people's work. So my process of my painting is also takes me to understand other people's work, you see. So the history of art and what happened in 14th century, 15th century Italy, or 19th century France, and contemporary time in the United States. All all this I'm extremely interested. So, and luckily, I'm not great skillful person, but I think still a little bit skill helps me in trying out variety of things, and that's the way it's still going on. Often I feel in recent time, some 5, 10 years back, I was doubtful about myself, what I am doing. Is it okay? Is it too much diversity? There is no singular concern or a depthful method of uh, uh, approaching a subject matter. I would go up to certain extent, take somersault, go to another direction, all this. So, those doubts are there. But I realize that I have no option but try out various things. So there are too many options is the only option, I have. And um, I decided not to, doubt myself, not to question myself, because each individual work itself is a huge challenge. It's not a joke. Every square inch matters, and if it bothers, then you I can't sleep. You see, so I feel that not to doubt too much and kind of just do it whenever and whatever I felt. So I feel I should have total freedom. Freedom is the most important thing in life or in art, and not to get influenced by the market, the other forces, or the recognition, because these things can also make you a bit how shall I say, the into a into a kind of formula. And once you realize that this is what people are admiring, this is what sells, this is what been kind of people like this, and then there's a tendency to repeat. And if that's the death of an artist, I would say. So I think one should try out. One, if one feels doing things, one should allow oneself. So that's the way I have been kind of um, cinema, of course. I forgot to mention that cinema is something which I'm very much interested. Of course, not so much Hindi popular commercial films, but that too I kind of use in my work. The images from there, but the great cinema, the good cinema, from Europe or uh, from our own country, some of the great filmmakers like Satyajit Ray and Ritwik Ghatak and Mani Kaul. These people's work, I have been admiring as at the very young age onwards. So I feel that how story has been told. So the narrative aspect of a work of art painting, which I engage, because I feel that when I'm sharing to my audience, my viewer, it starts with family, home, family people, the neighbors, other friends, and then you feel that okay, it's worth sharing to a large audience. That's why it goes to the gallery or into the museum. But one should, yeah, it's important for me, the viewer, and how they see. So I think so when there is a story, when there is a kind of things to speak, uh, the viewer gets engaged. I myself enjoy that. That's why I do it. But and probably that's why probably I'm not an abstract painter, because I studied at the Jesus School of Art, and in the late 70s and early 80s, it was mostly a abstract mode or a trend in which the seniors, the teachers, everyone was working. And I'm if you ask my most favorite artists are S.H. Raza and V.S. Gaitonde. Of course, Tayyab Mehta and Akbar Badamsi also I love, but I mean, so there's nothing that I don't um, relate to an abstraction, but I think it's just a kind of sheer inner need of uh, telling things through paintings. And I like when the people get engaged in what they've done. So often there are very hybrid juxtaposition of things from in very Indian local oleographs or Ravi Verma, and combining with Marcel Duchamp or some Western artists like Roy Lichtenstein, the pop artist, and that very hybrid sort of juxtaposition baffles or bothers sometimes viewer, which I like very much. And I think it's good because I am baffled to begin with. And that engages, viewer for a longer time. That's very important, I feel. That how, when you even leave the gallery, when you leave the picture or a painting, even then you carry, the thought and the idea with anger, with happiness, with surprise. So this is something which is important to me, and I feel that um, particularly the country like India, where we don't have many museums. I'm glad the map has just opened, and we need many more museums. You see, we have no public is not used to go to museums. Going to galleries also is rare. A few privileged people, they visit, they come for the opening, they acquire works of art. But India is such a large country, and uh, we have many more museums. How we engage our viewer, how we engage our people to come to see a work of art, because work of art has changed you know my life completely.
Absolutely, Atul. Absolutely. That's a challenge we are really looking forward to also. And,
Yes.
thank you so much. I took a couple of notes and I will come back to many of the points that you raised. I think we have to hand it over to Asim right now, that he also gets to introduce his work a little bit to us. Asim, would you go next?
Hi. So let me just go to the screen share. So actually, I'm going to present only one part of my work because I think in a short time span, it's difficult to go into details of a lot of different things. So this presentation is mostly about my work using bamboo. Bamboo is a material I'd already started working with while I was a student of architecture. And here you see some student exhibitions and installations that we'd worked on. But and even after I finished architecture, I was not too convinced about the practice of architecture for myself. I felt it was relegated to CAD environments and office and studio spaces, but I was more interested in working with materials myself. And I was really lucky in 2005 to do this project in Khoj, which Pooja Sood really encouraged me to do. And because I had been doing a lot of design based work before that, this project was very fruitful for me because in this, I felt I was my own client and I could push ideas as far as I wanted or stop when I wanted. And then I slowly started working more and more in the art domain. This is a project I did in 2011 in Jorbag with Outset, which was sort of there was this two-story house, and so in this the bamboo had sort of almost infiltrated the space, going into cupboards and breaking through the floor and the ceiling, connected through three floors of the building. Um, and at that time, I felt because I was working with bamboo and rope, I was sort of getting typecast as a romantic traditionalist, which is not really what I was trying to show through my work. Um, I think there is immense potential in both vernacular as well as really new technologies. So this is the first project where I actually tried to mix the two. So there was this sort of text-based projection, which altered with the audio of how people moved through the space. And then this went into more and more complex sort of iterations. This is a really hyper interactive sort of an installation which has touch sensors, weight sensors, light sensors, and depending on how people move through it, it gets activated or not as well. And there are no instructions, so you really have to explore and touch and feel to be able to activate it. Um, But while I was doing these projects, the bamboo I was using was actually very poor in quality. It was just stuff I was buying from the market in Delhi, and very prone to insect attack and not very resilient. So I started researching seasoning and treatment of bamboo. And actually, it's very sad to see where seasoning has reached today. Most seasoning of timber, whether it's bamboo or normal wood, has now been replaced by poisoning. We're pushing poisonous chemicals into timber to keep borer insects out of the timber. And still that material is sort of sold or propagated, advertised as eco-friendly material, but quite often than not it has a lot of toxic chemicals inside it. But in my own fieldwork and research, I had seen, for example, there are houses in Meghalaya and also in Assam, which are like 60, 70 years old, made out of about 75% bamboo and really in very good shape. So I started researching vernacular seasoning methods. And also, I found some very interesting research coming out of South America, where some architects were looking at Native American seasoning of bamboo. So combining these two techniques with a local partner in Assam, now I have been seasoning bamboo using very passive, non-chemical techniques. This has got to do with the solar cycle, so it can only happen in 2-3 months of the year. It's got to do with the lunar cycle. We only harvest during the waning phase of the moon, um, and a lot of sort of simple processes, but perhaps they're a bit time-consuming. Eventually, we soak the bamboo in the Brahmaputra for about 4 to 6 weeks and then slow dry it. And now we've also started actually smoking the bamboo. And, uh, and now I've managed to sort of get a good balance in the system. So we're getting very, very good, well seasoned bamboo out of this process. More recently, in 2017, I proposed to the Samdani Art Foundation that I wanted to do a sort of a living, growing sculpture, and because I knew that they were going to set up a sculpture park, and they've been really good at supporting my project. So this was actually a paddy field initially, and paddy fields are sort of designed to flood, while bamboo doesn't like flooding too much. The rhizome should be above the water. So, and this site is actually very, very good for bamboo because it's got the right topography, the right soil type, right climate for bamboo, and there's a lot of bamboo growing around anyway. So, what I did in the paddy field is actually I dug up a lake um, and used the mud of the lake to create mounds so that the when the bamboo is planted, it will be higher than the water. And we did a lot of erosion control, soil management, fertilization, but all again using like just local things. So like there's a dairy farm nearby, so we got a lot of cow dung from there. There are a lot of dead leaves we used, and also we transplanted a lot of grass from neighboring plots to keep the sloping soil in place. And now this has actually become quite a flourishing uh, sort of almost like a bamboo forest. In this, I'm embedding very interesting sound making mechanisms. This particular Aeolian wind flute is actually was developed in Polynesian islands. So if the wind blows in a certain direction, the slit in the bamboo starts whistling. So depending on the wind direction and also the wind speed, the soundscape keeps changing. Now I'm trying to mix harvested bamboo with the growing bamboo. So eventually, I mean, this is like a 20-year project that I have proposed, and we are right now only year 4 actually. So we have a lot of time to play. So the first 2-3 years, my emphasis was more on making the bamboo establish itself, and now that it has established itself, now we're trying to mold it into different forms. And yeah, also there's fish in the water, there's frogs, there are even some snakes, a lot of birds. So, and also trying to see what other plants grow well with bamboo in that particular climate. And this brings me to the main project that I'm presenting today, which is a Durga Puja Pandal I did in 2019 in Kolkata. So, this is actually a very low income neighborhood um, in North Calcutta. But the person who commissioned me, you can see him here in the purple shirt. He's the puja in charge. He's a man of immense energy and also willing to take a lot of risk. So, I mean, I've worked with large institutions around the world, but this project was really exceptional. I had full freedom. I never gave any proposal of what I was going to make, and he never asked me, frankly. I had a particular site, I had a particular budget, and I was free to work in any way I wanted. So, what I've become really keen on working on large projects is actually trying to create a system where the creative decision making process is gets sort of decentralized over a large team. So rather than me micromanaging each and every aspect and each and every detail, I try to design more systems and processes and get a good skilled team together with the relevant resources and let them innovate and let them try their hand at it. So the first phase of this project was more research based. For almost 3 months, we were going back and forth to Calcutta. I was working also with an architect, Shantanu, who is my right hand man on the project. Just looking at different crafts, different methods of working. This wooden board building, which has been going on for centuries in the same method. Cane craft, and also looking at different types of bamboos that are available and which bamboos work well for which craft. And then while that research is happening in Calcutta, there was also a lot of prototyping that we were doing in my studio. So we would scale down the materials and try to see what sort of forms we wanted to develop and try to play with that. So that was more the construction and bamboo and cane stuff. But I was also very keen, and so was my client actually, very keen on embedding this whole pandal with an interactive system. So we did a lot of prototyping for electronics, interactive systems, um, to create like a sort of a playful environment where when the viewer goes in, there's a sort of a soundscape, but kind of musical related to Durga Puja sort of songs and rituals. And of course, the construction started with this puja because it is about a puja. Um, and then I had fixed with a local contractor to manage the local Bengali team over there. I gave him a very simple roof structure that I wanted to make. And I told him which should be the high points and which should be the low points, which should be the empty areas. And actually, I left him to do it by himself for like 10, 12 days. Uh, and this is what he started making. Then Shantanu and I came back and we wanted a more organic, seemingly chaotic sort of a form embedded inside this. Although, of course, there is a lot of process in that creating that chaos. It's not just arbitrary. And then we let the workers do more and more of the detailing, give them a hint of something we were trying and let them try it out. And we tried many things. We tried I mean, out of the kind of processes we tried, maybe we used only 50-60%. The rest we just discarded eventually. So we were also trying to expose the craftsmen to good documentation about bamboo craft. So one is their own understanding of the material and their own experience of it, but then also looking at how other people have been working with the same material. So one of my big references that I gave was actually Japanese basket making for the tea ceremony, which is an extremely skilled sort of a craft. And yeah, so we it was just like an immense team effort, uh, mixing cane workers with bamboo workers, with scaffolding workers, with electronics engineers, architects, and everybody towards, so in the beginning of work, obviously people want to do what they're comfortable with, and they want very specific instructions. But after we got a good understanding going, actually I deliberately withdrew from the process, and letting people cross interfere. So the cane workers started working with bamboo, the architects started working with cane, and the electronics engineers started working with the carpenters. So it's like cross training. And also I had invited a origami artist from Vietnam to make the idol. I personally don't have that much experience working with the human form and animal forms, so I was keen to collaborate with someone, and my client suggested that I look for somebody from outside India. So this is actually made out of paper. And also a mural artist from Bangalore called Anpu, who brought in a lot of Durga symbolism into the wall space that we had. This is like the entrance way to go in. So if there's nobody in the space, it's quiet. But as people start going in, their step weight is counted, or if they interact with something, that triggers some reaction, and then the whole space starts working like an orchestra, which is in time with each other. So it's not like cacophonic, that something is playing and something else is playing off time. Everything is timed together. And this is what it looked like in the end. This is my team, not all of it, maybe half of it. We can only get that many people for a photograph. Um, and yeah, really, I look at this sort of a process as a completely collaborative process where people are given a lot of responsibility, uh, and also direction to some extent. Yeah, there is a hierarchy, of course, especially for large projects like this. You need some sort of a hierarchy, but at least in the creative process, I was trying to take everybody's input into what finally we make. And unfortunately, the interactive part is very tough to show in pictures. There's a video on YouTube. Maybe I'll post it on the chat, which, if you are interested, you can look at. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asim. So my first question would be a little more around the process of making work and also the relationship you have with other people while working. Asim, because you just presented, and I think your work is very fresh with us right now, could you talk a little bit about what it's like for you to work in teams and your
Yeah.
interest in decentralizing the idea of the work itself? Um, do you work with friends, for example, as well? And would you say that to you the process is more important than the actual work?
Yeah, I mean, having worked in the design and architecture field before I sort of moved into art, um, I always found that there was a big disconnect between the creative decision maker, the fabricator, and the user. Um, Somehow, at least, I mean, in the contemporary design world, actually, um, the designer is sitting in these pristine studios and CAD environments, and almost sort of declaring fatwas about how things should be produced. And the fabrication process is unfortunately bogged down by the tender contract process, which is about you know time restraints and cost restraints. And so the fabricator rarely has the opportunity to do any innovation. He's mostly just following instructions. And the user, at the end of it all, is just has this thing handed over to him, and he has to make the best of use out of it. While I felt that when you look at vernacular systems of creativity, and also vernacular systems of education, actually, there's a lot of feedback between the user, the creator, and the designer. So yeah, so I've been quite keen to involve people I work with, and also that's one of the reasons I leave things quite open ended. My forms are rarely decided in advance. Um, Depending on how the process happens, the mood, what material is available when, things keep changing and flowing. So, but again, I mean, like I worked in Australia with the Asia Pacific Triennial, the Queensland Art Gallery, and also with like really big other setups. And those guys are actually really, really keen to not take the responsibility for taking any creative decisions. They want um, they want very clear, precise instructions, and they will execute only that. And when that work is over, they stop and they wait for more instructions. So in those sort of situations, actually, I've had quite a tough time trying to get the team to actually step in and do things. In India, it's a little easier in some ways, but it's a little, actually it's not easier. It's different. Usually, craftspeople in India uh, tend to do the same thing again and again and again and again. And so if you give them that same task to do again, they'll comfortably just keep sitting and keep doing it. But if you tell them something like this, but not really like that, then uh, they are reluctant to actually uh, yeah, they're reluctant to innovate in that sense. So, but because this project and also some other projects I worked on, we had like 3 months with each other. So the first 2 3 weeks were very instructional from me and from the architect. But once we felt that those guys are getting the hang of how we were getting into these chaotic forms and these curve forms, then we deliberately withdrew from the process. And they were very scared initially. Um, they're like, what if we make a mistake? Basically, that's like the prime thing. And I said that if we make a mistake, we'll just remove it and we'll do something else. It's not a problem. We just do it. So it took time. It takes time to develop that sort of a trust, not only between me and the worker, but even the other way around. The worker trusting my judgment. Um so it's a more I don't know. It's a little more intense process, and it requires more trust. It has more chance of failure for sure, but it's more fun.
Yeah, thank you. I think this difference is very interesting. The project versus the artist working alone in his or her studio. And I think Atul, in your case, I imagine you work in your studio alone by yourself. And is that a solitude you enjoy in a certain way? And I'm also always wondering about the relationship you had with other artists. You often mention Akbar Padamsi or Tayyip Mehta. They appear in your work, but I also wonder whether they were your critics in a certain way.
Well, actually, yeah, I mean, I used to work totally on my own, till 2000. And then when I started working on shutters, so automatically, the metal workers, those who prepare the shutters, um, they especially make for my requirement. And then to paint on that corrugated surface, I had a very ready-made images from calendar or something. So I got the artist assistant who would do a very basic things in me. And then somehow later on they remain there in the studio. So sometime they prepare things for me. Like say if the projection is happening on a canvas, then they according to my direction they kind of would do. So there are people who are around, carpenters, metal workers, even a house painter. They prepare the surfaces for me the way kind of surface I want. So and I'm fine with that. I manage and I get my isolation the way I want it, and the way I kind of convey them, they understand what to do. So that's different process. But of course, we are doing say watercolor paintings, or a certain kind of oil paintings, then I need total privacy. I prefer when I'm alone and not to get disturbed because the medium demand that kind of concentration. Regarding other artists, Yeah, there are many friends, and we often, as a young, because at the age of 10, I was clear I want to be a painter and nothing else. So I was looking at people's work, like Hussein and Souza and Raza, all these senior masters from Indian art. And then when I joined Jesus School of Art, first thing I said I would must go and talk to them, meet them, see them how they work, what they think. So luckily, some of the artists like Mehta and Akbar Padamsi, particularly Give Patel, Sudhir Patwardhan, Prabhakar Barve, all these people are very generous, with their time, and they would ask, and like sometimes if I asked a silly question, like Tayyab Mehta was very strict, he would get angry, But with Akbar Padamsi, I felt that he would not get angry. In fact, he would get kind of, he would more sympathetic, and he would even read, a text from a French book or a French philosopher or a Sanskrit, text to me without doubting me that whether I will I am a student of second year or third year, and whether I will understand what he's saying or not, or a very complex theory, from a anthropologist or a philosopher, whether it will reach to me. He never doubted. So one thing I felt, one thing I learned from him, that never doubt your viewer. You see, that, oh, they won't understand. I never felt that my mother, who was not an educated person, she was a housewife, but she will not understand, my painting, a complex painting, probably, that I never had that doubt. And for that matter, I don't have a doubt for any viewer. So meeting these painters, then we would talk about cinema, we would talk about literature, and share. Tayyab Mehta would give me a book, which he would say he is not going to give, he doesn't give to anybody, but he would give me, Andre Malraux's Voices of Silence, but make sure that you return book to me in a certain time, all that. So I think, and total commitment, to painting, no nonsense, no, the sale, market, demand, gallery, acquisition, all this thing is definitely part of our work, because we go to the gallery and we exhibit. But when you are in your studio, you're alone, and you have to, give 100% of yourself, rather than, so that is something, which was great actually in those times, in those, formative period. This kind of, having total faith in yourself, not to succumb to any other demands, but devoted totally to creativity. You see, this is something, it really helped me, and I still think about them often.
Do you sometimes feel that these time constraints that Asim was talking about, to have to finish a certain work within a time period, the working under pressure?
Well, like, of course, last 25, 30 years, I've been showing professionally. So there are deadlines. There are always, dates are fixed for the exhibition. And, you are supposed to meet those deadlines, because, like announcement of exhibition shows or some participation, which one is invited. So it's there. But what I noticed before even those kind of deadlines or any invitation, as a student, we used to participate in some local group shows, which is organized by the Jahangir Art Gallery for young students or something. And when I would work till the last minute, and somehow I enjoy that tension. I love it. That there is a very little time, and I have to finish things. So somehow I have managed that. So yeah, it sometimes it's there, but I feel that if you give me sufficient time, or if you give me less time, I think what I do, what I will be doing in specific given time. It's not that if I would have had more time, I would have done much better work. No, that's what I noticed also. Even that, yeah, I mean, I'll finish, say, in 2 weeks time of painting. I'll take 2 weeks. Then even if I have 10 more months for to exhibit those works. So it's like that. But then I work simultaneously on various body of works, in my studio. I from very small watercolors to large oils to metal work, shutter works or cabinets. Everything is happening simultaneously, and very easily I move to one from another. Only thing, my problem is that when there is a time to kind of do or show large oil painting, and I am supposed to do at that time, I feel a strong urge to do small scale watercolors. You know,
Yeah.
that is a kind of tussle or a kind of a tension happens within me that, oh, I feel like doing watercolors, but then because the show is such, or the concept of the show is such that it requires a large scale oil or something. So that happens, but now I'm used to all this.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. Also, looking at your work, Asim, your work seems to be in a state of chaos often, maybe even a frenzy. While Atul's work is often arranged in a system or certain categorization. Though both of your works are often held together in an architectural framing, be it of shutters or windows, constructed to hold the work together. Can you talk a little bit about the orderly and the chaotic in your work?
You're asking me or Atul or both of us?
Both of you.
Atul, आप start करिए. Why don't you start, Atul?
Um, no, can you just again explain me the question, please? And
What
what?
what role plays the orderly in your work? Often your work is almost like an archive of ideas, archive of encounters, objects, people, and it's arranged in a certain way. Can you explain that a little
Yeah,
more?
really, it is just um, uh, uh, solid concentration, concern what you have been doing, that's one thing. But the memory plays a major role, I feel, in my case, because like I remember things, I don't forget things. The large collection of books, so I know which book is where. And not only that, but which specific image I'm looking for or I would like to refer as a kind of a inspiration probably, or as a kind of a to quote in my work, in which book, in which part, in the beginning or it's in the end, that I know very well. So I think uh, it's the just kind of your it's a daily practice which you um, which you follow, and then it's not out of any kind of pressure or any like you want to achieve or go and get something which is the whatever I want or what I want to do achieve is the painting itself. So I think it's a um, it's a very systematic. I come every day to my studio at 10 o'clock. These last in the lockdown, I am stopped coming on Sundays, but otherwise, every day from 10 to 8, I am there in the studio. 1:30 sharp, lunch comes. 2 to 2:30 is afternoon nap is must, and then one cup of tea and two biscuits, and then again, my battery is charged, and then I work. So yeah, it's quite a kind of a like office job sort of a thing. But within those hours, from morning 3 hours and the evening 3 hours or 4 hours, it's not necessary I paint. I paint, but then I go back to read things. I suddenly refer to something else. I, uh, um, you know, um, uh, listen to music, things like that. But has to be in my studio. I have to be.
Yeah. Asim, do you want to talk about chaos a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I have very poor memory, frankly, for specific things. But um, not. I mean, and I understand and remember and whatever with more with systems and larger processes, not with my memory is not so good with specifics. Um, and actually, I don't have a studio practice really. I rarely go to my studio. Most of my work happens on site. Um, I do go sometimes to my studio, um, but chaos actually. Although there is apparently a lot of chaos in my work, but actually that chaos is quite strongly based on hidden systems, which once you look at the work and maybe you spend some time with it, the viewer may get a glimpse of it. Um, so I think the chaos also is reflective of just our socioeconomic and built environment today. I mean, if you look at the cities that we are living in a chaos of commerce of real estate actually, which has hardly any planning. But at the same time, there is some system that you can recognize within it. So perhaps some of the chaos in my work is reflective of the uh, larger world that we live in. Um, but yeah, chaos is a very um, it's a word that has been abused a lot. I think um, it sort of to some people at least it implies almost meaninglessness or doing something without any thought or without any process. For me, it's not like that at all. Actually, I'm very particular about how that form is generated in terms of the process more than the final product. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theory of chaos also in mathematics and in philosophy as well. So yeah, I think it's sort of it's not correct to look at it only in that sort of popular meaning of chaos. There is a lot of system and a lot of thought that goes behind it.
You also mentioned the chaos of the city, and
Yeah,
that the city matters to you, and I think the same is there for Atul's work as well.
sure.
How do you look at the city and urban spaces? Is it a resource for material for research, or do you find the stories you want to tell, Atul, in your case, perhaps in the city space? How has the city of Delhi for you, Asim, and the city of Mumbai for you, Atul, influenced your work in a certain way?
Asim, or shall I say?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. See, regarding, yeah, I will come to the city part, but the chaos which Asim was explaining, and you asked about. See, there are two. There is a chaos in mind also. What
Yeah,
happens? Things are chaotic. For various reasons, for personal, psychological, or or uh, art in general, knowledge. Now with internet and other technology, so much input goes in. Like if I want to see something, one interview on YouTube, they suggest 10 more interviews, and I lose my concentration from the real interview which I wanted to see, because I'm tempted. That's my weakness, of course, but I go and will try other interviews which are suggested. So much suggestion keeps coming, and then there is a kind of it creates another kind of complex feeling wise, probably chaotic. And our cities are anyway chaotic. It's just like a totally as Asim was saying, no planning, no design, no kind of you see anywhere any hoardings, any politicians gets kind of birthday uh, hoardings, and it looks ugly. So I think this outer chaos in the city, in the life, and the chaos which is within artist or person's mind. I think it is art which saves me, from both the this tense, chaotic situation. It gives me a kind of a design. It gives me a discipline. It gives me a kind of much more rhythmic and uh, playful, I would say divine actually experience. And that's something, which is, that's why I think art is for, what happens to us when we see a work of art. It's just why we are so happy, why we go to museums, why we feel, oh, I just love this Rembrandt or anybody, any art. It could be tribal art, it could be um, contemporary art. So I think there is sort of cleansing happens in the process of making art and observing and experiencing a work of art. That is what I feel about the city. Yeah, I mean, the Bombay city is of course is so much changing all the time. And I was born and brought up here. I still live in the same suburb where I was born. So in the old style chawl, and those beautiful houses has gone, skyscrapers coming, and there are no parking areas, so the streets remain same. The and then the everyone from all over the country, the people come here to earn. So it's crowded city, but somehow, because one lives here, you like it. I like my country, I like my city, I like my people, with all its weaknesses, all its faults, or all the kind of limitations. But it's mine. So I think somehow I manage, and as I said, that uh, it gives me energy, a lot of energy actually. It's a love-hate relationship. I hate at the time, in the traffic, in the pollution. At the same time, if it's everything is too neat and clean, I miss that chaos. So it's very, in a way, complex kind of, you know, emotion or a feeling.
Asim, I think
Yeah.
the hate relationship with the city is something we can sort of relate to at times, being in Delhi right now.
Yeah, I kind of identify with the love-hate relationship for sure, with urbanism in India. Um, the city has been quite important. I mean, Delhi has been quite important for me for my work, but also I'm really keen to engage with other kinds of urban developments and urban spaces. So, like I was doing a project in Vancouver a few years back. So there, I mean, yeah, my process is very research heavy initially, and also very not so focused. It goes into many different directions. So I like to go and did two three things that I am really keen to explore in urban spaces. One is a pet obsession of mine is where does the water come from that people use, and the other is of course what do people do with their trash? What happens to the waste? And then also looking at sort of historic versus contemporary planning methodologies that are being followed in different cities. So the built environment is important for me, but at the same time, the natural environment or mm, the ambience and the material and quality of natural environments also plays a very important role. So a lot of times um, that tussle between the what is now being called Anthropocene and sort of perhaps sort of a more naturalistic environment that is constantly there around us. I try to actually bring that into my work at times. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I have so many more questions, but we're running out of time, and there are a lot of really good questions in the Q&A session. I might not be able to ask all of them, but I want to try at least to read out a few of them to you. So there's Deepti. Deepti is asking Asim, there are a lot of materials that can be used for developing such architectural spaces and can be very sustainable. So why have you chosen bamboo as a working material?
Well, I don't know if Deepti has that much experience working with bamboo, but bamboo is actually a really amazing material. But at the same time, I think, see, if I did a project like the Durga Puja Pandal, say in Paris, it would have a completely different connotation. In India, we have a really, really rich heritage of vernacular craft in cane and bamboo. And today, our developmental goals are such that we are running away from our vernacular crafts and moving more towards industrial materials. So, like, for example, instead of having say a cane utensil, people prefer to have a steel or a plastic utensil, and that is the aspiration that is being pushed down to us by the education system, by the government uh, developmental programs, by World Bank, by hundreds of thousands of things. So somebody who's living in a very good, comfortable, hygienic bamboo house thinks it's over. He wants to live in a concrete or a brick house. He feels if he lives in a brick house, he's in a pakka makan. He's socially, moved up the ladder. So that is why actually I'm using bamboo a lot in India, perhaps to try and give a positive contemporary image of that material, which is really bogged down by its historical associations.
Mm, thank you. Then there's another question for Atul by Anjana. And Anjana is asking, do you face the canvas with a clear idea of the end result? Or does your work evolve naturally as you go along?
Well, it's there naturally. You see, I start with an idea. I have a clear idea to begin with, but you see, once uh, um, I paint those ideas, then I'm not happy with, because what I knew what I want to start with. So I am aware of the process now, that I start with something, but then in the process I change. Then I do it whatever I had originally planned, and then I realize, oh, this is not sufficient. The I thought the red will look great, but somehow it's not, like I don't like it. So it's mostly it's instinctively. I do the changes also, and in the process, there is a lot of change. The painting, um, I don't completely change my subject matter. That's for sure. But I think there is a lot of addition and lot of editing happens in the process. So sometimes you might feel that looks quite clear way of working. It again, in because I do very diverse things. So sometimes certain realistic watercolors, like the Gandhi watercolors, the first thing there, I cannot kind of do a variety of changes. But in the process I realized, okay, it should not be a black and white, but it's sepia. So that comes, and then I add little bit. So some in some work there are little changes from the original idea. Some has a very drastic and dramatic changes happens. So it works both way actually. There is no rule as such,
Okay,
but
thank you.
still, yeah. But basically, it's like never a kind of you start with an idea, but you come to a new experience, and that's why we paint for that new experience. I should be surprised myself.
Thank you so much. There are lots of more questions in the Q&A box, but I've been told I have to wrap up right now. But I really appreciate that both of you shared your process, your concerns, and though your work is so different, I think there were a few overlapping things. I think your engagement, your interest in the city and certain communities is certainly there. And thank you so much for sharing that. Um, I would also really like to thank the sign language interpreter Neha, who's been with us throughout, and of course the audience and all the people who ask questions. We really hope to see you soon again. And if you want to find out more about MAP and the Bangalore International Center's upcoming events, please sign up to our mailing list through our websites. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.